Thank you, Aman. This is true. This talk should be given by Ella Derefsey, who did all the research work behind that, who prepared the slides, and who was excited to come here and present it, but could not for visa-related issues. That's how it is sometimes. Okay, so this is a talk where I would like. This is a talk where I would like to talk to you about security-related optimizations for ADSB. So what is ADSB? ADSB is the automatic dependent surveillance broadcast that is used for airspace surveillance and collision avoidance by airplanes. So airplanes send out messages that contain their identity, their location information, some timestamps, and so on. And they are being received by on-ground sensors, which you can see. Those sensors forward the messages to the air traffic control system or to another centralized server for further processing. Now, since this whole system has an open nature and there is not a lot of security protection in place in the protocol, it can easily be attacked by attackers that try to prevent messages from being received by jamming, for example, that modify messages or that send spoofing messages, insert new messages basically on the channel. So we are interested in this work in the security optimized placement of the infrastructure, so of the sensors on the ground, in which way they can be optimally placed such that attacks can be better detected. That's our goal. So let me first introduce you to two techniques that can typically be used in order to identify attacks that are ongoing. There's the classic system of multilateration, MLAT, where time differences of arrival of signals are used by at least 4 receiving stations that then can identify or can verify the location claim that comes from a message that was sent out by an airplane. So these airplane messages contain location claims, and they can be verified by 4 sensors on the ground, basically, based on the time differences of arrival on those positions. That's a technique that works with pretty good accuracy, but requires at least 4 sensors on the ground to participate in this verification. There have been proposals for using less sensors, using 2 sensors only, in particular for the ADSB system in a form that is called lightweight location verification. This achieves less accuracy than MLAT, but can be used when only 2 sensors are available on ground to verify the location claims. Now I move to the real world. What we have, what you see here on the figure is ADSB coverage as captured by the OpenSky network. That's an open network that is collecting the signals that are sent by the airplanes, and it's making it available for researchers, for aviation interests, for journalists, for everybody basically who wants to work with the data. And as you can see on this image, there are dark red areas where a lot of sensors are located that are collecting those messages, and there are areas with no or with little coverage of ADSB sensors. In those areas where we have little or no sensors available, where maybe there's only 1 sensor that receives an ADSB message, then we cannot apply these verification checks that I showed on the slide before. But we can only use them in areas with enough numbers of sensors that collect this data. Having a lot of sensors close to each other locally, however, has also some impact. In particular, maybe an interesting target for jammers, because whenever they are found within the jamming range, then all of those sensors would be affected. And if we use sensors too close to each other for verifying MLAT location claims, then typically we get results that are of less accuracy. So ideally, we would like to have sensors that are spread out a little bit for higher accuracy in their location data. So our question that we are asking in this work is, where should we best place ADSB sensors to support the security mechanisms for ADSB on-ground operations? That's our question. The way how we tackle it is we define it, or we first model basically this problem, this ADSB sensor placement problem, under a number of security constraints. It gives us a multi-objective optimization problem, basically, that we are tackling here, and we have 3 concrete security objectives. The first two are relating to MLAT and the lightweight location verification techniques that I showed before. And the third one is regarding jamming attacks. And I will come on the next slides to what that means. So the first of these three objectives, here the goal is the multilateration, so to enable multilateration with good enough GDOP. So GDOP is the geometric dilution of precision that gives us an indication of how good the accuracy is that we get from the location result. As you can see on the left-hand slide here in that example, when the sensors, as I mentioned, are close to each other, the result is typically not so good. So we would like to have situations rather like we are on the right-hand side here, where the sensors are spread out further and can then give better or more higher accuracy results. So here, what we have is we actually have a minimization problem. In particular, low GDOP values means higher accuracy. So we are actually, our optimization function means we would like to minimize those GDOP values. The second objective function goes back to the lightweight location verification, where the transceiver ranges actually matter. So the distances from the airplane to the receiving locations here. And as it turned out, and was investigated in the original paper, is you get better results when the receivers are closer to the actual location of the airplane. So here we would not like to have the situation as on the left-hand side, where they are very, very far away from the aircraft, but rather closer together. So we are minimizing the transmission ranges from the aircraft to the sensors. And then we have our third objective function regarding jamming. And here we have actually three subdirections. We would like the sensor, so the distances between the sensors to be maximized. I mentioned the further they are apart from each other, the more, the higher power the jammer will have to use, such that multiple receivers are affected. Also, we would like to have the jammer and the sensors placed as far apart of each other for the same reason. And also the number of jammers around the attacker, so that fall within the jamming range of a jammer, should be minimized. So we have a number of maximization and minimization problems that we specify. And then we have to basically combine that and apply that. So we have to solve this optimization problem, but we have to solve it for specific scenarios. And I would like to introduce the two scenarios that we are considering. The first scenario is we use this optimization problem from scratch, assuming that no sensors have been deployed. That's not what the real situation is, but it gives us a baseline of how good we can be in the end. That's the upper image here, and we figure out what are the best placement of those sensors if we were able to restart with the system, if nothing has been deployed. The second scenario is what is way more realistic, because there are already sensors that have been deployed. So we are asking if we can add another number of sensors, like N ADS-B sensors, additional to the already existing ones. So we want to add more. Where should we best place them such that we can best apply our techniques and we can have the security relevance verification mechanisms in place? Now, how do we solve that? When we don't have, so in the first example where we have nothing deployed at the beginning, we want to cover a certain airspace here. These are different, just the dots are locations where the aircraft can be, a certain budget of sensors. We are asking where should we place those sensors in a new setup. How do we do this? Well, there are different possibilities where we can place them, and we want to figure out what is the best one. So how do we figure it out? The solution approach for us is we generate uniformly distributed sensors and put them at, just think about hypothetically put them at a different location. And then we use optimization algorithms. In particular, here we use a genetic algorithm, the NSGA2, which is the non-dominant sorting genetic algorithm 2, where we give our optimization functions that I presented as input. And then based on the mean squared deviations of the achieved and the required distances or GDOP values and so on, we get an output that is generated by this algorithm. And that's basically what we get as output here for the fresh scenario. For the one where we already have existing sensors on the ground and we want to add more to them, take a similar approach. We have to figure out two things actually. What is actually a number of sensors that we have to add? Of course, we want to add as little as possible, but for the best outcome of that. So we have to figure out what's the good number of sensors to add and at which locations should they be. Use the same approach. We run the algorithms on hypothetical locations of sensors, use the same algorithm, and then get an output. So much about the approach. Now let's apply that to real-world sensor locations. So we extracted the data from the Open Sky Network for the geographic area around Frankfurt Airport. What you can see in the middle here, there are these small dots. There are actually a number of them overlaying. So these are more than 15 sensors that are currently located there. And what you can see in orange here are possible locations that we considered. We can, of course, talk about the granularity of that, but these are possible locations that we considered. And the green crosses are locations that were then returned as part of the solution by the algorithms that we run. So when we look at the results, what we get for this example, we get fitness values from our algorithm for the currently deployed sensors. These are numbers that don't have that only have a relative meaning. Basically, when I show the next two examples here, the numbers that you see, they don't have a meaning by themselves. It's just relative to what I will show next. Then we ran this algorithm for the fresh scenario where we didn't have any sensors deployed. So we deployed 30 new sensors, and we see how that performs in terms of for the three optimization functions, how they perform. And we do the same thing for the scenario where we have already existing sensors, and we add 50 new sensors to that setup. And we see a slight shift in a certain way from this corner here a bit more to the middle. And the difference between these two distributions basically gives us how far, when we deploy 50 new sensors, the best new sensors, how far to the optimal solution we could actually get in that setup. That's the idea. So we have a baseline that we can compare with here, compared for a sample scenario around Frankfurt, but we can apply it to any area basically. And that's the idea. We now have a number of additional evaluations here. I'll just refer to the paper, but I come to the conclusion. So we modeled this problem where we take, for the first time, security considerations into account in this sensor coverage problem, which is typically just considered as a pure coverage problem, but not taking these security aspects into account. We provided a set of non-dominant solutions here for the proposed problems on a certain location in Central Europe. We can obviously run that for other locations as well. With that, I would like to thank, first of all, ARMA Swiss Science and Technology and Martin Strohmeyer in particular, who was involved in the very first start when we started investigating these ideas. And like a paper with more information. So it's a short paper, as mentioned. A full paper version is available online as well. And with that, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. So, any question? Avionics systems are very exciting and will become very exciting. Please come.
Thank you for the talk. This is Amir Yazdani. I was wondering, how would the solution of such optimization problem compare to a scenario where you have sensors deployed over the whole available grid? You said budgeted number of deployment sensors are available over that grid that you try to select a number of sensors from this grid. So I'm just thinking, how would you think the solution of your optimization problem would compare to that optimal case where you have sensors deployed over that whole grid?
You mean in which way our solution is restricted or worse than having a free distribution? Okay, that's a good question. I mean, obviously, we try to be granular or fine-grained enough that we have a lot of different possibilities, but there is a limit to that. So when we generate an example and run that through the algorithm, we can't consider really every location. My answer to that is that I think overall, in the end, what we have to compare it to is still the real-world situation. So in my even if we may get a number of locations as output of the algorithm, but then we still have to place them in the real world. And in the real world, we may still not be able to exactly hit that location because there is an obstacle at that location, or we just can't plant a certain device. So in the reality, there's another shift to in terms of location, and I think probably that the impact that this shift for reality has will be more than what we get by this granularity and inaccuracy in certain ways. So, of course, we can play with that. We can run.
Also, I think, do you think the position of these sensors around the jammer is also important? I think it might also affect your detection and.
It's. I would say it's more the jamming range. This is also we idealize there as well in a certain way, but I think in the end, what you get out of that is still a very good indication. So the way when I imagine it is, you really have a certain setup, and let's say you have another budget of 3 or 5 sensors that you can place, and what you get out of such an algorithm is giving you some good reasons of areas where you should displace them. But in the end, if it's a couple of meters here or there, I think in the end really doesn't matter for the real world.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Online? No? Okay, so last chance. Well, you are still here. Somebody else. So let's thank Christina. And,